You type on it every single day. Your fingers fly across it without thinking. You have never once questioned why the letters are arranged this way. Why is Q up there in the corner? Why is E buried in the middle of the top row instead of sitting front and center? Why did someone look at the alphabet and decide this random scramble was the best option? The answer goes back to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the late 1860s. A newspaper editor named Christopher Latham Sholes was tinkering with a machine that could put letters on paper faster than a human hand. The early prototypes were crude. The keys were arranged alphabetically, just like you would expect. A B, C, D, E, F, G, right there in order. It seemed logical, it seemed obvious, and it was a disaster. Here is what happened. Inside the machine, each key was connected to a thin metal arm called a type bar. The type bar swung up and struck an inked ribbon against the paper. When two letters that sat next to each other on the keyboard were pressed in quick succession, their type bars would swing up at almost the same angle. They would collide. They would jam. The typist would have to stop, reach in, and untangle the metal arms with her fingers, over and over and over again. Sholes worked with two partners on the problem. Carlos Glidden, an inventor who had funded the project, and Samuel Soleil, a mechanic who understood the internal machinery. Together, they tested dozens of key arrangements. The goal was not to make typing faster. The goal was to keep the machine from breaking itself. Think about that for a moment. The most important input device in the history of computing was not designed for efficiency. It was designed to solve a mechanical problem that no longer exists. In 1873, Sholes signed a deal with E. Remington and Sons, a company famous for making firearms and sewing machines. They took his design, polished the casing, and began manufacturing what they called the Sholes and Glidden typewriter. The first models shipped with a layout that was close to what you know today, but not exactly the same. It took Sholes 5 more years of refinement before the arrangement settled into its final form. The United States Patent Office granted him patent number 207,559 in 1878. That document contains the first official appearance of the QWERTY layout. But here is where the story gets strange. There's a popular claim that Sholes deliberately separated common letter pairs to slow typists down. That is not quite what happened. He separated common letter pairs so their type bars would not collide. The result was that typists had to move their fingers more awkwardly across the keyboard. But the purpose was mechanical reliability, not speed control. He was not punishing fast typists. He was saving his machine from destroying itself. The QWERTY arrangement also had another subtle advantage. Salesmen for the Remington Company noticed that the word typewriter could be typed using only the keys on the top row. This made product demonstrations easier. A salesman could sit down, type the name of the machine without looking, and impress a potential buyer. Some historians believe this influenced the final placement of certain letters, though hard evidence is limited. Then something unexpected happened. Typists adapted, not slowly, not reluctantly. They adapted fast. Women who learned QWERTY in typing schools across America in the 1880s and 1890s became astonishingly fast on the supposedly awkward layout. Muscle memory is a powerful thing. The brain does not care whether the arrangement makes logical sense. The brain only cares about repetition. And the more people who learned QWERTY, the more valuable QWERTY became. Every new typist who memorized the layout made it harder for any competitor to replace it. By the early 20th century, QWERTY had become a locked standard. Typewriter manufacturers around the world adopted it. Teaching schools built entire curriculums around it. Office workers spent months mastering it. The cost of switching was no longer technical. The cost was human. Every secretary, every clerk, every journalist in every office in every city had to unlearn decades of muscle memory and start from scratch. And yet, someone did try to replace it. In 1936, August Dvorak, a professor of education at the University of Washington, patented what he called the Dvorak simplified keyboard. Dvorak had spent years studying letter frequency, hand alternation, and common English word patterns. His layout placed the most frequently used letters on the home row, where fingers naturally rest. The vowels a, o, e, u, I sat together on the left hand. The most common consonants sat on the right. His research suggested that a trained typist on his keyboard could type faster and with less finger strain than on QWERTY. The idea was elegant, it was grounded in real data, and the world ignored it. During World War II, the United States Navy ran a study to see if Dvorak keyboards could help their typists work more efficiently. The results appeared promising. But the study was small, the conditions were not perfectly controlled, and critics pointed out that the test typists had received extensive Dvorak training, while the QWERTY typists had not received any refresher instruction. The Navy quietly shelved the project. In 1953, the General Services Administration conducted another comparison. A researcher named Earl Strong tested whether switching government typists from QWERTY to Dvorak would produce enough productivity gains to justify the cost. His conclusion was blunt. The improvement did not warrant the expense of retraining an entire workforce. The report killed whatever momentum Dvorak had built. August Dvorak died in 1975. His keyboard never achieved mainstream adoption. You can find it today buried in the settings of your computer or phone, an option almost nobody selects. Why was QWERTY actually better? Probably not. Multiple analyses have shown that Dvorak's layout requires less finger travel and promotes more natural hand alternation. But better does not always win. The economist W. Brian Arthur wrote extensively about what he called path dependence, the idea that early choices in a technology's life can lock in a standard regardless of whether a superior alternative exists later. QWERTY won because it arrived first, spread widest, and trained the most hands. Today, more than 1 billion people type on QWERTY keyboards. The mechanical type bars are gone. The jamming problem vanished decades ago. The original reason for this layout has been dead for over a century. And yet the arrangement persists, carried forward by nothing more than habit, institutional memory, and the enormous cost of asking the entire world to relearn how to type. There is a deeper lesson here. The tools you use every day were not designed in a vacuum. They were shaped by constraints that may no longer exist, by accidents of timing, by deals between people whose names you have never heard. The QWERTY keyboard is not a monument to optimal design. It is a monument to the power of getting there first. So the next time your fingers move across that familiar scramble of letters without a single conscious thought, remember this. You are not using the best layout. You are not using the smartest layout. You are using the layout of a man in Milwaukee who was trying to stop a machine from jamming in 1878. And the reason you are still using it is not because it works perfectly. It is because 200 years of human hands learned it before you did, and now you cannot unlearn it either.